Good evening. This is KC9UDX. My name is Matt, and I welcome you to the 2 a.m. net. The purpose of this net is to promote the use of amplitude modulation, and also to establish this part of this band as a place for AM activity in this area. Everyone is invited to listen. Licensed amateurs who can do so legally are encouraged to check in. We listen in the AM mode and transmit in the AM mode where possible. If you cannot transmit in AM, we encourage you to listen in AM and transmit in FM. If you are transmitting in FM, please adjust your transmit frequency a couple kcs above or below from our receive frequency. This facilitates the use of slope detection, that is, demodulating your FM signal with our AM receivers. When checking in, please announce your call sign in standard phonetics. Again, this is KC9UDX. My name is Matt, and I will now begin accepting check-ins. Any stations wishing to check in, please come now. We have very summer-like weather out there today. Maybe everybody is outside enjoying the weather. Anybody wants to check into the 2 a.m. net, come now, please.
Good evening, Matt, W9JCC.
And there we have one, welcoming Frank, W9JCC. Do we have anybody else? And now we got a newcomer recognizing and welcoming, sorry, I got to turn this other radio off here, N9UX. Joe, welcome to the net. Do we have anybody else? All right, hearing none, we'll start here. I had kind of a scare here. You know, I took this radio to I took it to the Milwaukee Radio Amateurs Club meeting, what was it, had to have been last month, to show it off. And when I brought it home, I tried it out on receive, but I guess I just took for granted it would transmit. And then upon trying it here tonight, it did not transmit, so I was very upset at myself for taking the radio to the club meeting, but I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not. I set up a backup radio. Took me a lot of scrambling to do that. And then it was exactly 15 minutes before the net, I decided to open up the Gonset and see what was wrong with it. And it literally took me less time to fix the radio than it took to install the other one and take it out and put this one back in. So here we are back on the Gonset. Very, very happy to do that. I much appreciate the receive audio on this thing rather than the Yaesu. The Yaesu intentionally has bad receive audio. Somebody at Yaesu thought that was a good idea, but here we are. Very happy to have this thing working again. It turns out the transmit and receive relay had some dirty contacts on it, and fortunately Gonset over-engineered this transmitter so it didn't mind transmitting with intermittent contacts on the relay there. First we'll go to Frank, W9JCC from KC9UDX.
Okay, KC9UDX on the net, W9JCC, and good evening, Matt, good evening, Joe. Everybody coming in here in pretty good shape. Not a heck of a lot to report. Yesterday was a really nice day, and I went out and cleaned up the garden from last year because I didn't have a chance to do it before winter, so we got stakes pulled out and the wireless screens and all that stuff, and the only thing left now is some leaves out there from the trees last year. So haven't been doing too much on the radio. Let's see, I ran the 10-meter net on Friday, and that was really activity for some time there. So I'll turn it back to net control, KC9UDX, W9JCC.
All right, thank you, Frank. Fine business. You know, I should get back on the 10-meter net. I've got to get an antenna up in the air. My daughter and I built a 10-meter dipole, which should work perfectly adequately for that. But we don't have a good place to put it permanently. And now that all the snow is, excuse me, all the snow is gone, we should have a good way to put that thing up permanently. I have to do that one of these days. And they cut my overtime at work, so I have been getting things done around here. I guess I should prioritize and make that a priority. And with that, next we'll go to Joe, N9UX from KC9UDX.
Thanks, Matt. Hello, Frank, as well. Just inspired me, Matt, to get on the net of this one. So, thanks for doing a little demo at the MRAC meeting. I've probably done AM once or twice before. I'm sure it's never been on TV years, so this is something that's great, which is great. I love trying to use stuff in AM radio. Signal-wise, I got Frank Barnetti. Matt, I got 2 Barnetti forward, so I got to adjust the audio a little bit back and forth there, but I can make out everything. So probably a 5 and 4 is what you get for a signal report if I were going to give you one there. But working around the yard, trying to get it cleaned up. I also would like to get another dipole, get a dipole up in the air. I have a vertical for ACAP, and just really want to be able to change it up a little bit to be able to work some of the filter and stuff here now that 10 meters is over now as well. So thanks for hosting that, Matt. I'll be here and take as much as I can, but he's trying to have both. So back to that control. This is N9UX.
All right, thank you, Joe. Fine business. You are about a 3 out of 10 on my 0 to 10 meter. I don't remember if I discussed this at the meeting, but I don't have an S meter. It's 0 to 10, and Frank is always 10. It doesn't go any higher than that, or it would probably, he would definitely have a higher number than that, and you are a 3. So, very good audio. If you listen to yourself back on YouTube, now or later, you will hear that you're kind of off in the weeds, but that's pretty normal here on AM when your signal is low, which is not necessarily your fault. Your audio is going to be low, so one thing about AM is talk louder or you will be heard louder. If you can do that, please do. Otherwise, it's no problem. And now you've done AM twice or 3 times, and of course 2 meters AM once, which is more than 100% more than most people have. So welcome to the club. And with that, we'll see if we have any more check-ins for the 2 AM net. Come now, please. Maybe slow going tonight. Like I mentioned earlier, though, the weather is so good, probably everybody's outside enjoying it. And I do hear some distant voices on this frequency tonight. Now this radio's got a very wide receive band, so receive filter, I should say. So I can hear stuff very far away in frequency. But I was also hearing voices with the Yaesu, which has got a pretty narrow receive. So maybe somebody off in the distance, probably not even an AM. Hopefully we're not interfering with them. Otherwise, as the night goes on here, I'm sure we will attract more check-ins. And I'd like to say I have other things to talk about, but I don't have too much. I did quiet the exhaust on my vehicle, so next time I go to HRO, which may be next month or sooner, I plan to buy a Yaesu FTM 200. have a dual bander in the vehicle. I've got an ICOM, I think it's 2100, whatever it is. It's actually a very nice dual band radio. The problem is the receive audio is quiet. I accidentally ruined the gain control. I tried to clean it and I wiped off all of the resistive material on there, so it's only got about half volume right now till I get around to doing something about that. I was going to put that in the vehicle, but I guess I'll save that for repair someday. I guess I'll buy a newer one. Don't know that I'll use the digital modes on that, but I guess I can listen and maybe get used to it. I would like to have APRS functionality, and that's the only reason I look at buying one with digital capability. And I guess before we go to the top of the list, I'll ask one more time for check-ins. Do we have any more check-ins? Come now, please. All right, hearing none, we'll go back to the top of the list. Frank, W9JCC from KC9UDX.
Okay, KC9UDX, W9JCC. And, I was going to ask Joe where he's located. Slowly bringing up my QRZ thing here, and the computer's old. I mean, it's not a very good one to begin with, so it's very slow. And I think by the time I get talking here, I'll probably be able to bring it up and see where he is. But signal-wise, Joe's 100% copy, but he's about an S2. Here I'm using an PS2000, and now through the usual 35/9, but that's not too far from me here. As far as HF, about a week ago I did go up on 10 meters to turn down the AM rig. It's a Ranger and a 75/84 combination. And I did hear some stations, and I did work one on 10 meter AM back up on 2900. And between 2900 and 2901 is where we used to hang out years ago. So I guess that's still the AM window there. And what I found out was my S meter is way down for some reason. I was sitting here not in use for a while because I used to use it every week on 40 meter AM. But my antenna got tangled up in a tree and I could not get it down, so I was off of 40 meters for probably 4 or 5 months. And you said you're getting a STM200. I guess that's a dual band 2 meter and 440, I'm guessing there, Matt. And good deal on that. I don't have any new stuff. Everything I've got here is vintage. I think the last time I bought something new was about 1992 when I got the main station here. So anyway, we'll turn it back to that W9JCC.
All right, thank you, Frank. And yeah, it's 2 meter and 440. It's getting hard to find stuff that does 220 anymore. And I really like the Elinco that I've got that does 220 and 900, but that kind of stuff is they don't even make those anymore. I think you're aware most of my stuff is pretty vintage too. My main HF station here is a Drake TR3 and a very obscure KW Electronics 2000A, and of course the Gonsets here. But I do have some newer handhelds, and I've had newer mobile radios. I've had several newer mobile radios and sold all of those in the past. I had a really nice monoband Yaesu 2 meter FM mobile. It did 70 watts. And I used to work guys in Valparaiso, Indiana on a regular basis at night. I would find 2 meter openings, and that's the rig I would use. And I sold that a couple years ago when I needed the money. I sold that and a lot of other things. The biggest things I regret selling are probably that and the Gonset communicator original ones that I had, the original Goonie Bird 2-meter ones. I'd probably be using one of those if I still had it. And I sold a lot of that stuff for a lot less than I probably could have got for it, but well, I had to do it at the time. So, and I was going to comment on something else here and I don't recall, but we'll send it over to Joe and 9UX from KC9UDX.
Well, thanks, Matt. I have a mix of gear here. In terms of got some newer stuff. I'm working here tonight on the FT991A. I replaced a Icon 706 with this for working portable stuff, but set it up on the table here so we can work some AM, which is cool because when I rig that test, I'll do AM on 2 meters. So like everybody, I think I've got a variety of gear. This one, like I said, is mostly for portable and out-of-the-house work. At home, I'm pretty much using a 590 SD, so it's got my main HF rig at home, and then I've got a variety of 2-meter and 2-meter 440 mobile rigs. So it varies how I'm feeling as to what gets on the air usually. So which I think it is a lot of fun. Frank, I think you mentioned you used a CS2000. That was one of the rigs that I wish I had not gotten rid of. Really like that. I actually had a couple of them when I was rovering like it was the VHF contest. It was great because you had to have a lot of power there. You had to have amplifier and things like that. So, a lot of fun. And Matt, I was just checking out your QRZ page and saw the Commodore 64 there. So we'll have to talk vintage computers one of these days too, because I do a lot. I used to do a lot of vintage computer stuff, and there's a fest that goes on every year for vintage computer stuff that I'm always going to. But yeah, very cool. That's all. Like I said, a lot of other things been going on lately, so radio I haven't been doing as much for the past couple of weeks here, but I'll do a little mix of everything. Worked CW, worked with 5-band, worked digital, however the nose seems to go, or how the mood is, I guess. Anyway, I'll turn it back to Net there. N9UX.
All right, thank you, Joe. And we do often talk about computers on here, and I suppose we could talk for hours about old computers. You of course saw the Commodore 64, which I do use quite a bit. And next to that, what you can't see in that picture, there's a Apple II Plus and Apple IIe, a PET 2001. Behind me there is a PET 8032. I've got two of those. There's a CBM 128, a TI 99. I don't remember what all else is hidden in this room. But that stuff gets used about as much as much or more as my amateur radio stuff. I haven't I work too much, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to play with any of that stuff too much. But I still do write software for the Commodore 64 when I get time. I've got a very large project that I work on once in a while on there. I wrote my own assembler from scratch, and that's been a project I've been working on continuously since about 1990. And the reality is I worked on it up to the same point from scratch 3 times now, I think. And I forget what year here I started that over again, probably 2012 or 2013. I suppose I could look that up here somewhere. But like I said, we could go on and on about that. Let's see if we have any more check-ins for the 2 a.m. net come now, please.
KC9 UDX. That can't be right. N9CXK. Hi, Matt. Glad to hear everybody tonight. The last station, I wish I could have heard what he was saying. I can hear a carrier, but I didn't hear any audio. So maybe you can talk louder next time. Other than that, I hope everyone had a good Easter. Go ahead there, Matt.
All right, welcome, Carol, recognizing N9CXK. And I did forget to bring up Easter, I guess. That's my fault. Time flies. So, do we have anybody else? Any more check-ins? Come now, please. All right, hearing none. Carol, the station that you were referring to is Joe N9UX, November 9 Uniform X-ray. And I'd like to reiterate everything he said, but I will probably mess it up. He's got an FT991A, I believe, that he replaced an ICOM 706 with. This is his first time on 2 meters AM, and very glad that that radio can do that, and glad to have him here. And otherwise, he mentioned the Commodore 64 that sits next to me here. But with that, Carol, we'll turn it over to you, N9CXK from KC9UDX.
All right, Matt, very good. Well, that was pretty concise. I think you probably covered it all. That's good. I'm also using a 991A here, and it's been real nice. You know, all the VHF radios I have here, I have 4 radios that do sideband, but none of them do AM except this 991. So it's kind of unusual. Had my eyes on lots of radios on QTH.com and on eBay, but boy, they're all big old radios, and I don't know. There's some beautiful Clegs that are still on there, and there was a really nice Gonsis 6-meter radio. That one was kind of interesting. When people say that they work very well, then I figure, well, at least it might work. So, let's see, I'm looking at my meter. Oh, I see what. I have it on SWR. That's why it's not moving at all. That's good. That's good. I just probably as you were starting the net, I was getting off the roof. I had a bad problem with my stacked halos for sideband, and when I took them down, everything was full of water. The matching harness, or the phasing harness, the connectors, everything was full of water, and I tried to waterproof the daylights out of those things, so I could see the water just cools on the coax connector, and then it goes right down through the connectors and into the cable. I don't know how M² suggests that you waterproof that, but it's useless. I don't know. I got it down, I cleaned up the antennas just fine, and I drained the phasing harnesses. A little water came out of those, and I put them in the oven for a while. So I think that'll be okay. It doesn't look like anything started to rust. So I don't think it has been wet too long, but really annoying. So I put up my single halo antenna backup that I had. So that'll keep me going for a while here. And I did pick up a 2-meter receiver preamp that mounts up on the mast, the one that goes with my ICOM radio. So once, a reasonable guy would have put that preamp up there while he was up on the roof, wouldn't he? Oh well, that's another job. So, I don't know who's all in here, but I'm so glad that I remembered. This month is kind of funny with the dates and everything. It doesn't seem like it'd only be the second Tuesday, but it is. And the only computer you didn't mention was the Sinclair. So there you go. N9CXK, over.
All right, thank you, Carol. Well, there's just the 4 of us. Frank, Joe, yourself, myself. And you mention all these radios that do all these different modes. I'll tell you something extremely frustrating. I've got a Kenwood mobile radio, which is actually a really nice radio, as much as I don't normally like Kenwoods. And it says right on it in big giant letters, all mode. And it does not have AM. It's got sideband and FM, and or I think it has CW too, maybe. But I'm not even sure if that's the case. I think you have to do something special to work CW with that thing. But otherwise, it's sideband and FM, and that's it. And they call that all mode. That's something that really irritates me. I bought that radio. I wish I could remember the model number on it. It sits under my pool table. But I bought that radio when they were in high demand. I bought it used, and I paid a good chunk of money for it, and now they're worthless. Nobody wants them anymore. So I tried selling it a while ago, and I couldn't sell it. And I know what you mean with the water. Sometimes as hard as you try, the water seems to get in there anyway. I have fortunately not had too much trouble with any of my amateur radio antennas, but I've had that trouble a lot with TV antennas. You wouldn't think that water could get in, and it just does anyway. Now I suppose I should take some of these amateur radio antennas apart and inspect them for that, and I guess I haven't. This one here is too hard to take down, the one that I'm using right now. It's been up there for 10 years, and I'm not sure if that's ever going to come back down unless it falls down. And so far, it's survived a tornado. It's survived some pretty long or pretty hard straight line winds. So that's where it's going to stay as long as it works. And I guess the only other commercial antennas I have are a 440 antenna just like it, and the Radio Shack disc cone, which there's something fishy going on with that. I think I hooked up my antenna analyzer to it and it looked okay, and I think I used my radio on it and it worked okay. But when my daughter hooked up her radio to it, I could not get it to work at all. It was worse than a dummy load, and I'm not sure what is going on with that. One of these days, I guess I'll figure that out, and now that the weather is amicable, I can go up on the roof and probably check out the feed line and whatever. And we are at the bottom of the list. We'll see if we have any more check-ins for the 2 a.m. net. Come now, please. Hearing none, Carol, for your sake, I'm going to reiterate a story I told earlier. I hope I don't bore the other guys. 15 minutes before the net, I tried to tune up my power amplifier because I have to do that. And I hadn't done it since reinstalling this radio after bringing it home from the Milwaukee Radio Amateur Club meeting I went to last month. And when I tried to transmit, I got nothing on the power meter. So I scrambled to find another power meter here, which I don't normally use them. I've got an old Radio Shack one, the kind that is primarily, I guess, used by CBers, but it does work. And I couldn't remember how to use that. There's some way to calibrate it so you can actually read watts. And I guess I didn't take time to figure it out. So I was reading what I thought was probably milliwatts. And then I dug up the Bird directional meter, and I could only find a 100-watt slug. But even with a 100-watt slug, this radio should deflect that meter, and it did not. So playing around with a handheld with a dummy load, I determined I was only getting milliwatts. So I scrambled. I put a Yaesu, which I wish I could see it from here, and I cannot, so I cannot tell you the model number on it. It's an old early solid-state Yaesu that I have that does AM. I went through the trouble of hooking that thing up only to remember how much I dislike that radio because the receive audio on it is terrible. Intentionally terrible. They did that on purpose. Anyway, I hooked that up and I got everything else ready to go here. And then with just a few minutes left, I figured, what the heck, I'll take the cover off the Gonset and see if there's anything loose. And there was not, so I put a dummy load on it. Could not make the dummy load warm up. And then I stuck an insulated screwdriver in there and pushed on the transmit receive relay and found that was the problem. So I actuated a couple times and now it works. So in less than 5 minutes I was able to fix this radio. And then I scrambled to get it set back up again. I don't have the cover back on it, but it's on the shelf where it belongs. And this will give me a chance to, before I put the cover back on, repair a temporary wiring job I did way back when I got this thing. I did not realize I left it like that until I took it to the club meeting. I took the cover off of it on the table to show my daughter how easy it is to take it apart, and discovered a very embarrassing temporary wiring job in there, which surprisingly it works, so I do have to fix that. And the other thing I was going to say, you talked about Gonsets and Clegs. I have never bought a Cleg. I've looked at them a lot and thought about buying them. But I can tell you this about Gonsets. If they say they probably work, they almost certainly do work. I have come across these things in very poor condition and they just always work. Unless there's mechanical damage to the tubes, you know, maybe they need a tune-up, but otherwise they just work. These Gonsets always work. And I hope I haven't bored everybody to death with my story. I will check one more time for more check-ins. Anybody wishing to check in, come now, please.
I love the story.
All right, I'm glad you did, Carol. We're going back to the top of the list. W9JCC from KC9UDX. Go ahead, Frank.
Okay, thank you, Matt. KC9UDX and the group, W9JCC, and good evening to Carol. Yeah, I looked at, I brought Carol's web page up too. I took Joe's lead there and brought it up, and one thing I noticed right away, it looks like there's a Hunter Bandit down in the lower left-hand corner. I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago you might have mentioned that to me, but I completely slipped my mind until I brought that up again. And I wonder, I think that's the one with a pair of 3500s. I've got the smaller one with the 4572Bs, which kind of matches up with the Collins S-line size. Anyway, mine is a conglomeration of 3 different versions of 4572Bs. When I put the tubes in, I checked them for pick the best out of the pile, and I always thought they matched those things up for gain, but I guess they must match them up for where they resonate, which is probably game as well. But I noticed in mine, I put them in one at a time, and they all resonated at a different spot. So I just threw them in there, took the ones that gave the most power before the bust, and then put them in. And that was it. So I still can get about 400 or 500 watts out of one. And as somebody mentioned Easter earlier, we went to my son's place in Charlotte, and he hosted Easter on Saturday evening, so we had supper over there and had the whole family over there. That seemed to be about the only way we could get everybody there at the same time. And about the connectors, as far as outside connectors go, it's still having a power. I've never had anything leak. I always put, if it's a PL259, I always put one layer of Scotch 88 over the entire connector, and starting with the coax in a peel the tape off after the coax seal comes off, so we won't have a mess with the connector. That's worked pretty good for quite a few years. So, anyway, I don't have a whole lot more. I guess I'll turn it back to Net. This is WNJCC.
All right, thank you, Frank. And yeah, we've talked about the Hunter Bandit in the past. You've got the one model previous to mine. Mine is the one newer model. There are not three 500Zs in there, I don't think. They're a similar tube. And I don't think they're three 500Zs. If I recall correctly, there's some modification you have to do if you install three 500Zs. Now, I could be totally wrong about that, but I thought there was a 4-digit number on those tubes. I used to know this stuff all off the top of my head. I haven't used that thing in so long. I hope it still works. But that thing is good for 1,000 to 1,200 watts with my Drake. And you mentioned that it is styled to match the Collins gear. And what's very interesting about that is I've got two matched pieces of non-matching Collins imitation stuff here. The KW2000 is of course meant to look like a Collins, and so it fits very well with that non-Collins Bandit 2000C. And it's interesting that they're both model 2000. Unfortunately, the KW is not 2000C. They did make one, but I have a 2000A. And someday I hope to get that working again. That radio, I really need to get it working because it's on borrowed time. It's got a mechanical filter in it like a Collins, but it's not the quality of a Collins mechanical filter. It's a very fragile unit, and it's a one-of-a-kind, and you cannot replace it, and it's an absolute miracle that the one that I have works. Everybody else that has these, their mechanical filters have stopped working, and they're not repairable. So I do have to get that working again and use it while I can. All I need to do is put new capacitors. You know, all I got to do is put new capacitors in the power supply. And I had bought capacitors to do that, but I think I needed a radial and I bought axial or vice versa, and it would have been too hard to install them anyway. And I never got around to rebuying the right ones. One of these days I have to do that. Well, and I guess I should mention I have another Drake TR3. I've actually got 3 of them. One that is strictly for parts, and that's the way I bought it. Somebody tried to do a 10-meter conversion on it, or 11-meter conversion on it, I mean, and botched it all up, and I bought another one that didn't work, and I kind of put 2 of them together to make a mostly working one. And I thought that I had gotten it almost completely working, and I dug it out and tried to use it outside with my daughter's antenna, and found out that, oh yeah, I did not completely finish working on that thing. It's got one serious problem. It only the receive audio is only clear on one sideband, so if you switch to the other one, it's very muddy. And I think on 10 meters it's lower sideband that it hears well on, so it's not real useful for that. One of these days I'll get back to working on that. It shouldn't be terribly difficult to fix that thing. Anyway, I'm rambling, so we'll turn it over to Joe, if you haven't fallen asleep, N9UX from KC9UDX.
that, there's enough to go around that hopefully can find, ongoing in the future. So they bring that home. But right now, it's more about cleanup and stuff and making some room for everything else. I've got a couple other projects and hobbies going on that I need some room still. So the radio here is kind of get rid of all the extra stuff. But that's fun. I enjoy trying different gear, and some you like, some you don't. That's okay. That's all part of the hobby. I will say, I'm sorry, I missed the call, and I was not able to copy real well of the things that came after me. So, Matt, maybe when I put it back over, you could call once or twice again so I can get that off here. Unfortunately, I was not able to copy it real well. Trying to jump over to the try to fix it and get it there if I could, but I'm not having luck with that. Anyway, so antennas, radios, it's all a part of the hobby, right? Anyone will talk to that in that way. Thanks for coming up, and
All right, thank you, Joe. And the station I think you're talking about is November 9, Charlie X-Ray Kilo, Carol, who, I'll get this wrong, I'd like to say is in East Troy, maybe. Maybe I've got that wrong. But I can certainly appreciate what you're talking about with the different radios. You mentioned the TR4. And that's very much like a TR3, only it has more bells and whistles. And I can see where some people can appreciate these things and other people absolutely cannot. I can certainly understand that. I really like the TR3. I don't remember what it is, but there's some slight advantage of the TR3 over the TR4. I wish I could remember what that is. But I think you'll see in the picture on QRZ, I have either an empty spot on the shelf next to the TR3, or there's a faceplate from one of the other TR3s just sitting there. And there's a very good reason for that. I had been searching and searching for years to find an RV3, the remote VFO, that matches the TR3. It's not just a remote VFO, but it also houses the speaker and the power supply. And I had been searching for years to find one of those, and I finally got one, and I do have that. So that's an old picture, and I don't have a current picture because around the time I got the RV3, I took the KW out of service, so that doesn't quite look right anymore. Anyway, with that, we'll go to Carol, N9CXK from KC9UDX.
KC9UDX and the net, N9CXK. Very good. Well, I narrowed my audio way down, narrowed the receive down quite a bit, and then I could hear Joe. I could hear most everything he said. So that helped a lot. And I turned off the noise blanker. I don't need it, and it was just garbling it a little bit. So that's good. And very interesting about all your different radios there. Man, oh man, I didn't think you had that much stuff, but you have a lot of things. So that's kind of fun. That's really suspicious that your TR3, I think it is, works on lower sideband but not upper sideband, because lower sideband is what most of the guys on 11 meters use. So that's kind of suspicious. But I'm sure you can figure that out. That's probably not a difficult problem to straighten out. It's working. It's just not quite right. So that should be easy to home in on, I would think. And Frank, I've been waterproofing antennas for 40 years. I use underground splicing tape. It's rubber tape, and I use it on everything. I had a half-inch hardline spliced and buried in my backyard, wrapped with that splicing tape, and when I dug it up, it was like brand new in there. And the antennas on my tower, before I moved, literally they were up there for about 40 years. And I took them apart. The connectors were clean and bright. But these M-squared antennas, the whole feed assembly and everything is just out in the open. And the coax connectors hang down. So the back of those SO239s are up, exposed to the elements. So I just covered the entire section there. There's a plastic block in there. I went around the whole plastic block, and then I just kind of taped it around and around and around all the way down. So I basically encapsulated the whole thing, and then all the connectors were totally wrapped with rubber tape and over-wrapped with, Scotch 33. And, well, it holds the water real good once you get it together like that. I don't know, I've never had something like that before. I've never had water in any coax. And then this loop I have up now, it's just fed, it's like a Cushcraft type with, it's just fed with the nut and bolt connections. So there I just waterproofed the heck out of the end of the coax piece up there with the nut and bolt connections on it. That's fine. But this M-squared thing, it's almost like there should be a hood over it or something. Because it's just out in the open, and I never saw how to waterproof them. So the whole stacked halo thing is down on the ground right now. But I put the other loop up, so I'll be okay. I won't be missing anything. That's it. Yeah, gosh, it's really interesting. Yeah, the only thing, I love all the old radios. I really do love them. I love the smell of the tubes in there. But my desk is chock full right now, and it's all solid state stuff. There's no room left in the end. I guess that won't be happening. Matt, maybe you have a Kenwood TR9000 or a 9130. I have both of those right here on the desk. And they are the all-mode mobile type radios. Yes, they don't have AM on them. Then I have a really nice ICOM IC820. That's like a base station. That's like a base station all mode. It doesn't have AM on it, so I don't know. I don't know what their definition of all mode is. They're correct. So I'm just so happy that this radio has AM on 2 meters. It's really a different thing, and I've been using this radio a lot, tuning around on the satellites too, and it works very well for that. And so I'm working on getting an actual satellite antenna up in the air to listen to I used to record the weather satellite maps. I just download them right from the satellite as they went over. That was really fun, but the station the antenna got worse and worse, and I had to take it down. And then we moved, and I didn't have any place for the antenna. So I do have what do you call it, the spiral antenna, quadrifilar helix antenna. It's made for 137 megs, but it'll work just fine on 2 meters for monitoring. So I'm going to get that up, and I can do a little better listening on the satellite. The horizontals don't work, and the verticals sort of work, but not very well. So that's my next move, and that mounts on PVC pipes, so that's pretty easy. I can handle that. Hacksaw and a jar of plastic cement, we're all set. KC9UDX and 9CXK, over.
All right, thank you, Carol. Got some background noise here now. Very strange. It's 120 hertz hum kind of noise. Not something I would normally hear. I've heard that a couple times here in the past. Pretty sure it's not local. When we're done here, I'll hook up a dummy load and make sure of that. You say you have no room there, and there's always a way. I had no room here several times, and then something comes along that I was looking for and don't have the room for it, but can't pass it up, and I make room for it. I have several pictures over the years of this area here in the basement, and you can see how several times I completely ran out of room, and I always managed to make more room somehow. There's always a way somehow. But yeah, this stuff does take up a lot of space. It's one of the things I was showing off when I showed off this radio at the MRAC meeting. This Gonset Communicator 4 is intended to be used mobile underneath the dash in your car, and it is the same it's roughly the same shape as a modern mobile radio, only 3 times the size and 3 times the weight or more. So yeah, things have gotten a lot smaller. And that's interesting that you're receiving the weather satellite. That's something I've always kind of wanted to do. I wonder if they still transmit something that you can receive. All of that stuff has changed in the past couple of years, but maybe that hasn't yet. And yeah, anything that's close to 2 meters will receive on 2 meters pretty well. I was going to comment on something else here now, and I forgot. So, we are at the bottom of the list. Let's see if we have any more check-ins. Come now, please. Well, I can say with certainty that that noise is not local. It's changed, and it is definitely a distant sounding sort of sound now. Oh, one other thing I was going to say is, yeah, you mentioned that it's suspicious that lower sideband works better on 10 meter, and I would say that is definitely the result of the person who did the 11 meter conversion tinkering. There were several things that they did that I corrected, and that's probably another one of them that I haven't corrected yet. It's funny because there's a service procedure for that radio that says in big bold letters, if you ever think you have to adjust these coils, there's four coils in series. If you ever think you have to adjust these coils, you are wrong. Don't ever adjust these coils for any purpose. If you are convinced you need to do it, you have to send it back to Drake. And I did have to adjust those coils because somebody blatantly did mess with them, and I was able to correct that problem. I don't exactly remember which pieces were which, but one radio was a total derelict. Somebody had taken all of the tubes out of it, and the chassis is all rusted, and there's a lot of other parts cut out of it. And the other one had an 11 meter conversion or partial conversion, and I don't remember which one ended up which way. Probably most of the parts, the original unit is the 11 meter conversion one, the one that I put together and sort of works. Anyway, let's go back to the top of the list. Frank W9JCC from KC9UDX.
Okay, thank you, Matt. This is W9JCC, and I do appeal when you do the connectors properly. You can leave them up there indefinitely. You take them down, they're just like new. And what's been my experience? I think when you put something up in the air, if it's, in my case, if I got to take something down because of a bad connector, it's a major undertaking. And I used to be able to do it all myself, and the XYL I could take the tower down. I think we could still do it, but it's not easy. As far as not having any room left, I haven't had room left in the shack here for a long time. In fact, I've got pretty much the same setup I had since 1992. And I did have another rig. I had a SB series from Heathcote that I put together years ago. and it was in this shack before I picked up the Israel equipment, and so I put it on the shelf near the workshop for about 10 or 15 years, and then one day I decided to put it back in service, but I had no place to put it, so I negotiated about 2 square feet of the patio with the XYF, and I built a wooden rack. I got the amplifier, the Hunter amplifier on the bottom, the SB401 that's sitting on the middle shelf, and the SB301 is on the top shelf. And on the top of the rack is some miscellaneous stuff like the watt meter and so forth. And I've been using that for probably another 10 or 15 years, and it's been working pretty good. So in the summer months I use that. Somebody mentioned the Collins filters before. I usually, I got a 7584 when I bought it. I bought it used, and it came with the standard filter that comes with it. I think it's a 3 or 3.5 kilohertz filter. And I was on the air one day on AM with it, and at that time I had built a kludge filter for AM, which was nothing more than an IF can off of a little portable radio. So I drew a small IF can, and I put it in place of the 6 kilohertz filter slot. And I was talking to somebody on the air with it, and somebody in New Berlin heard me describe the AM filter I was using. Somehow he got, I don't know if he called me on the radio or he got a hold of my number or something, but he called me and said he had a 6 kc and a 2 or 2.5 kc Collins filter for the A4, and had a good price on them, so I picked them up. So I got all 3 of them in there now. They've been in there for quite some time, and they do work very, very well. I don't have too much more. I guess, let's see, we'll take it back in that WNGCC.
All right, thank you, Frank. And you mentioned the guy in New Berlin. I wonder if it's the same guy I ran into. Forget what the heck I bought from him. But the only reason I ran into him is because he had a voltage regulator tube for the TR3 that I needed. Maybe he's the guy I got the RB3 from. That would make sense. But it wouldn't surprise me if we're talking about the same guy. I cannot for the life of me remember his call sign. He moved away right after I talked to him, and that's why we talked. He was moving, getting rid of stuff so he could move. And what else was I going to say? Oh, the Collins mechanical filters. There are guys that have adapted those to the KW radio out of necessity because you cannot get the KW mechanical filter, and it is not an easy thing and probably not worth it. At least when I looked at it, I didn't think it was worth it. The input and output impedance on the Collins filters is drastically different than the ones in the KW filter. So you have to build impedance transformers, and I don't remember what else you have to do to make them work. This, for some reason, this always makes me think of the Q multiplier I've got, and I was going to mention that before anyway when Carol mentioned narrowing up his receive filter. This Gonset Communicator 4 operates with a 455 kilohertz intermediate frequency, and I've got a Q multiplier that obviously works on that frequency, and I always thought it would be really easy to insert that in the receiver in this radio, and that would help out with my receive issues. The only drawback of this radio is the receive filter is so wide. It actually comes in handy. You can literally listen to multiple multiple transmissions at the same time, you know, across the band. I can hear several repeaters at once sometimes. But it would be really handy to narrow that up too. And next we'll go to Joe and 9UX from KC9UDX.
Filtering is something that's always fascinating me. There's so many different types. Got out there, did a lot more contesting. It was really handy to kind of narrow those systems down and put all the everything else out of there. Kind of the opposite of what you were just talking about there, Matt. It's going to be able to hear all of the signals out there. I just want that one little one that I can pull out. So, yeah, it's something that I think it's a bit of an art, right? That's pretty I have not. I don't think I've been right to it, but I've been testing the filters in there. I'm pretty much stocked, and I understand why they were an option, right? Good bit of money on a good filter. When needed, it's well worth it. Anyway, I am going to have to sign off and make this my last match, so I'll try to pull up the YouTube later and listen to the rest of the match, but it's been a lot of fun. Definitely we'll be back, got it in the calendar now, so I'll know when it's coming up, and really appreciate you on this. It's a lot of fun, so I'll keep that. We'll say 7-3. Carol, nice making your thing. Frank, nice talking to you again, Matt. Thank you for running this. Let's say 7-3 everybody. Wish everybody a good night. So we'll go back to that. This is MIUX.
All right, thank you, Joe. And we probably won't be around here too much longer. Probably call the 7-3 round next time around here. We'll see. We normally don't run much longer than an hour. And sometimes we go way over. But tonight I don't plan on doing that. My spring allergies are starting to set in. And talking for this long can get painful. But you mentioned contesting and how a filter will help, and that makes me think of a guy in California who swears by the Drake TR7, and he's absolutely 100% right when he's talking about this, but nobody wants to hear it. That has the quietest receiver of any commercial amateur receiver ever made, and it is a quieter receiver than any modern I guess digital or whatever radio, but nothing else on the market that you can get your hands on is as good for contesting as that radio. That's something else I've always kind of wanted to have, and I've passed them up several times because I just don't want to make room for it. But that would be a really nice radio to have. I also passed up a really nice TR6 at a really low price one time. That I kind of regret that, but the TR7 is a really amazing rig. Anyway, Joe, I'll say it's really good to have you here. So please do come back next month. Put it on your calendar. And yeah, you can check it out on YouTube. At least you can tell how you sound here, sort of. I've got a big giant old hi-fi speaker facing the opposite way from this microphone, and I don't know how well the audio comes over. I don't really listen. I probably should do that. Anyway, we'll say 7-3 to you, Joe. And something else I was going to bring up and don't quite recall what it was anymore, but I'll turn it over to you, Carol, N9CXK from KC9UDX.
KC9UDX and the net N9CXK. Very good. Yeah, nice to meet you too, Joe. Good to hear you on here. I'm not exactly an old hand, but I've been here for a few months anyways, and really enjoy it. Really enjoy rag chewing and really enjoy AM. So, yeah, that's when I was trying to hear Joe, I went from I was running the receiver at 9 kilohertz and I went down to 6, and everything sounds good. Matt, you sound great there. Everybody sounds good. So I may just leave it at 6 kilohertz. I don't need it any wider than that. Nobody's playing music yet, so we're good. And yeah, for Easter was great. We got my 93-year-old mother out of her living arrangement and brought her out here to the lake so she could see what we did to her house. And she was just flabbergasted. There was nothing the same, barely anything the same, and she just kept walking around and looking around. And she said, "I can't believe it. I can't believe what you did here. I can't believe it." So, but it worked out really well. She even climbed some stairs and came back down the stairs with some assistance and used her walker, which they haven't been letting her use her walker. They want her in a wheelchair. I said, "You know what, Mom? You can walk around here." I said, we can keep track of you, no problem. And she had no trouble at all. So it was really a pretty wonderful Easter. Really nice. And yeah, I guess you know, if the LBR doesn't start to get crazy on your antennas and the people you talk to don't notice any difference, I wouldn't get too worried about the antennas. They're probably sealed up okay. A lot of the antennas, these fiberglass antennas, they have sections that don't seal right and they leak, and the water pools in the base, and immediately the SWR goes sky high. You can't hear anything. It doesn't transmit. You know right away, and they say when they pull the radome off, the water just pours out. So you have to be, I've found over the years with these fiberglass antennas with sections, you just make sure you absolutely waterproof every place where the sections go together, and the base, and the antenna connector, and you can make it last until the fiberglass wears through or something. But typically, if you take a little time and make sure that it's sealed, you'll be okay. You'll be okay. Yeah, and these other antennas of mine, I can't fathom how you're supposed to waterproof them. Unless I just encapsulate the back of that SO239 completely with RTV silicone, I guess I could do that. That would just encapsulate it, hopefully keep the water out. I don't know. I still don't like it being out in the open. But, yeah, I don't know if you guys haven't been, I know Frank is, but I don't know about the other guys. If you haven't been on 10 meters, man, oh man, get on 10 meters. There's a lot going on. Friday night, at like this time of night, I worked New Zealand on 10 meters on Friday. So that was incredible. Just on voice, on sideband, I worked the guy, and we had a little conversation. So it's pretty exciting, and I think we got a couple more years of stuff going on here. We'll be having a great time, unless the sun gets too crazy. And sun activity is building up all the time, so who knows? Who knows how that's going to work out? But man, I really enjoyed everything here. I guess I'll make this my 7-3 round if you want, and that's fine with me. I got a few other things to do here tonight, and I sure appreciate you running the net, and I appreciate everybody being here. It's a lot of fun, a real lot of fun for me. It's totally different than any of the other modes I'm operating most of the time. KC9UDX and 9CXK. 7-3 all.
All right. Thank you, Carol. I'm sure you know about this already, but I'll bring it up. If you're going to use RTV silicone, try it out first. I've learned the hard way that not all RTV silicone is RF friendly. So I wish I could say what stuff I used that didn't work, but that was a long time ago and I don't remember anymore. But what else was I going to say? Well, I know what you mean about 10 meters. I gotta get with my daughter and get that antenna up permanently somewhere. I've got another 10-meter dipole that I used to use, but the one we built together is a far superior build to the one that I built. We even made our own balun for it. The toroid, ferrite, toroid, and wrapped, I like to say, number 8 gauge wire around it, which was totally unnecessary, but that's what I had. So at least that antenna should be good for the 250 watts I'll probably put to it. I wouldn't be shocked if it would handle the 1200 watts I could put to it. But I don't think I need to do that. And certainly my daughter can't. I don't remember what her restriction is. Maybe it's 200 watts. You know, I'd have to think about that. I don't know if the TR3 puts out 250 or 150. Maybe it's only 150. So I'll have to figure out if she can use that. But she can always use the Radio Shack HTX10. Works just fine. That's only 10 or 15 watts or something like that. Anyway, let's see if we have any last minute check-ins for the 2 a.m. net. Come now, please. Well, our background noise has gone. That's a good thing, I guess. Well, I guess, Frank, it's just you and I. So I'll turn it over to you, Frank, W9JCC from KC9UDX.
Okay, very good, Matt. This is W9JCC. And 73's to Joe there, and I think Carol might have gone too. And Carol, congratulations there on getting your mom over to your house. I know you were talking about it on the 10-meter net and planning that, and well, that all turned out good. And I used to, as far as the UHF, VHF antennas, for a long, long time, all I had was a Ringo up on top of the tower. All aluminum, it would handle a kilowatt if you wanted to, but it was only for 2 meters, and then we got a repeater on 1240 here now, and I ended up getting a Hustler, which I think has got a plastic or fiberglass or some kind of non-metallic covering around it, and a little matching network with some low-power components. It can only take about, I think, about 100 or 150 watts, which is okay because I can't get that much up there. But I was always a little bit hesitant about putting that up there because I didn't think it would be nearly as reliable as the Ringo. So I don't have too much more. Thanks everybody for checking in. Enjoyed the conversation, and Matt, thanks for running the net. And I will say 73's for all, and bid everybody a good night here. So back to net, KC9UDX, W9JCC.
All right, thank you, Frank. And yeah, I completely neglected to say to Carol, you know, it's very good to hear about his mother and everything else going on there. We don't see any extended family people anymore around here. Everybody has moved away or not around anymore, so. But I'm glad to hear when other people can still. That's good. And with that, I will say this concludes the 2 a.m. net. Feel free to reg true on this frequency after my transmission. We will meet again on the 9th of May. May 9th. So, until then, this is KC9UDX73, and good night.
Good night, Matt. Thank you. Frank, was that a original Ringo? Not one of the fancy ones, but just an original?
Oh, yeah, well, I think it's, let's see, when did I get that? Probably around 1978, 79 time frame there, Chuck.
Yeah, so that one was just like a 5/8 wave with the ring on it, and that's it, right?
It's got a 5/8 wave, and it has the little 98% ring or so section there in the middle of the kill.
Okay, yeah, because really the original was bulletproof. I mean, as long as you got that ring adjusted correctly and fastened down, that would last forever. The later ones, like the Ringo Ranger and the Ringo Ranger 2, with that extended top element with the phasing thing sticking out to the side, the phasing stub, and then it had a quarter wave or a half wave, like a half wave maybe, a coax that went down to some radial stuff. Those things, they got messed up pretty easily, but the original one was like bulletproof.
Yeah, I was trying to think. I think mine is about, I'm guessing around 7 feet tall, something like that. There's no radials, and there's just that, tuning stub in the middle.
Oh, okay. Well, I think then that's a Ringo Ranger. The original one was just like a 5/8 wave aluminum, so there was like 2 sections to it, and then the ring, and that was it. But yeah, if you have the one with the tuning stub in the middle, then that's like a 5/8 over 5/8. So that's got a little more gain.